Okay, mics are on. Mics are on.
Okay. Hello. Good evening. Hello. Woo. I can be heard. Look at that. Woo. Sorry, never heard myself so loud before. Welcome to the Granville Exempted Village School District Board of Education meeting. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good. Take the roll, please.
Dr. Corman?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Ms. Deeds?
Here.
Mr. Wolf?
Here.
Ms. Shaw?
Here. Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye. Commendations?
Okay. I'm going to come down there to the podium.
Sure.
I'll face this direction. Good evening, everyone. The board takes the opportunity to commend people for accomplishments that happen either from last year or during this year. And tonight we get to recognize two fantastic teachers. One is the award winner for the Transcendia Excellence in Education Award, and the other is the Jody Van Tyne Award winner. So first I'd like to recognize Molly McCrary. Molly, you can come up here and stand here. All right, well, I guess that's it. So the Transcendia and Excellence in Education Award is provided by Transcendia, Inc., and it is for excellence in mathematics and science instruction. It is given to one teacher per district in Licking County. Transcendia is located on 79. And it's a great honor to share with the community the work that Molly does every single day. Quite notably, Molly is a versatile and skilled teacher who conducts herself in a professional manner while consistently maintaining a positive attitude no matter what the situation. She is always well prepared and is an exceptionally organized person, handles challenging situations with integrity and grace, and it's clear that Molly takes pride in her responsibilities and truly is dedicated to the growth of all of our students and staff. So on behalf of the Board of Education and Transcendia and Licking County ESC, congratulations on your award. Okay, next is our award winner for the Jody Van Tyne Award, Leslie Hopping. Leslie, come on up. So the Jody Van Tyne Award is supported by the Granville Education Foundation every year. Jody Van Tyne was a second grade teacher in Granville Elementary School in 1977 until the time of her death in March of 1985. During her brief career, Jody was admired, respected, and loved by many students whose lives she touched as a teacher, their parents, the teachers and staff whom she worked with. Leslie is a teacher who has the remarkable ability to get students to buy into the learning process. She gets to know her students individually and by showing them how much she cares about them. She is expert an expert at creating interactive projects for students that keeps them engaged and interested throughout the day. Typically, she teaches fourth grade math and science, but last year she was a remote learning teacher and did a fantastic job of switching to a remote environment and still making it highly engaging and effective. There were multiple occasions in this teacher's driveway where families could drive through and pick up project materials and say hello. She went above and beyond the call of duty. Congratulations, Leslie, and well deserved.
Staff reports, please.
Okay, we'll get started with the August financial report. Up on the screen, you'll see a cash balance comparison. The gray bars represent our cash balance by month for last fiscal year, and the blue bars represent either the actual cash balance or the projected cash balance for the future remaining months of the fiscal year. For August, our cash balance is about $6.9 million more than where we were last August, which is what we would expect to see now that the income tax is fully phased in. That's typically what happens as that gets phased in and we have carryover cash from the prior fiscal year. Looking at August revenue collections compared to last August, local tax revenue is down slightly, which is primarily a timing difference between the property tax advance payments and the settlement. That always changes year to year based on how much we get in July versus August. And then state revenue is up slightly due to the casino revenue payment that comes in August. Last August, for a 6-month period, 3 months of that, the casinos were closed. So makes sense that we would be up in that line item as well. Year-to-date revenue, local tax revenue up. That's the timing of the income tax payment. So last July and October, there was a timing difference because the tax filing deadline was pushed back. So by the time we get through October, that next income tax payment, that line item should level out compared to where we were last year. And then all other revenue is up, and again, that's the increase in the return of advance payments. We have the ESSER funds now that we had to reimburse at the end of the fiscal year. On the expenditure side, just a couple, go ahead. Oh, sorry. I'm looking at it on my screen and forgetting it's behind me. Thank you. So again, looking at expenditures compared to the prior year, just for the month of August, salary and benefits up slightly, which we would expect just due to step and base salary increases that we see each year. The purchase service line item is down, and we'll continue to see that each month this year because we don't have the transfers out for community school open enrollment and scholarships. That's part of the change in the funding formula that we talked about last month. And then all their expenses, that line item varies just due to timing of purchases of supplies and things like that. That's going to vary more than the other line items. Then looking at expenditures year to date, so for July and August, salary and benefits down this year compared to last, and that's a carryover of the software conversion issue that we had last year where we had 2 insurance payments in July to get on the correct flow moving forward for how the new system works. Purchase service, that difference between the 2 years is going to continue due to the tuition payments that I mentioned, and then the timing for all other expenses. So each month I'm going to do an adjustment here on the right side for accounting for the insurance double payment in last July and as well as the tuition payments, just so that we can have more of an apples to apples comparison. So after adjusting for those two items, expenditures are down about $43,000 compared to last year. Then looking at our COVID-related funds, so here we have each of the grant categories where we received funding that is restricted for COVID-related expenses only. And thank you, I'm sorry. The blue bars here represent how much we've already expended from those specific funding categories. The orangish color is the remaining balance in each of those categories. So most of them are completely expended at this point. This graph shows then how, of all of those COVID funds, how we're actually spending them. We've talked about this in prior months, but just as an overview, they again have to be related to COVID-specific funding categories. We have a set aside that we're required for credit recovery and summer intervention, cleaning supplies, HVAC improvements, additional custodial services, and PPE. And then this is just a more detailed breakdown of how each of those funding categories, how each of the funding sources breaks down into those different categories and how much we have left to spend in each of them. And then finally, we have our cash reconciliation that we're required each month for audit purposes. Any questions from the board?
It's good to see the line item in there for the facilities improvements. I know we've done a lot of work on our HVAC systems, air circulation and filtration and things like that. So it's great that the operations team was able to do that, and it's great to be able to use these funds along those lines. That's a key line of defense. So thanks for keeping us up to date on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Brittany? Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, the next staff report is related to the OSBA policy update. So for those in the audience, the board reviews policy changes 3 or 4 times a year that are recommended by the Ohio School Boards Association. They send a list of new or revised board policies that have been adjusted based on recent legislation, court cases, etc. So we have a list of new policy or policies for you to review. This is the first reading, except for the first policy that's identified up on the screen, which is new. You're actually going to vote on that tonight. It's the Ohio Principals Evaluation System. We're calling it OPES 2.0. It falls in line with what we transitioned to last year with the teachers, where the Ohio Teacher Evaluation System went through a revision process through the Educator Standards Board and was approved by the State Board of Education. So that is a new policy that will be enacted tonight if you approve it on the agenda. The other items are, a couple of the items are there for customization, so there will be some specific Granville language related to those board policies. Most of them are related to changes that have occurred, like in Title IX over the summer, in some of the legal cases that have been resolved that require a slight tweak in process or protocols. And then the rest are, the majority of them are items that are cross-reference changes. Anytime there's a legal update or a change in legislation, it requires a legal update. And so you can see the list is pretty long. I'm not going to bore you with the specifics because the specifics are not necessarily germane to the implementation of the policy. So other than the OPES change and some of the Title IX sexual harassment grievance procedure processes, are there any questions that I could answer? Remember, this will come up for a second reading at the next board meeting and approval as an action item.
And how many of these are basically required by the changes in legislation versus open to interpretation or changes by the district?
There are 3 or 4 that are open for interpretation, but I would say 95% of them are something that is just more of a clerical update.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. I am going to jump into the return to school plan. I'm going to somewhat face the audience here, but last time I did this, I stood up and it was hard for me to navigate the papers, the mask, and the presentation. So tonight I'd like to share about the first month of school and our current state related to COVID-19 and prompt a discussion for a path forward with some of our layers of protection. I think we are all aware that the governor had a press conference last week that prompted a conversation between superintendents and local Nationwide Children's Hospital and Children's Hospital affiliates around the state related to the healthcare industry and their ability to keep pace with some of the illnesses that were coming through those systems. They contacted school superintendents, and we were on a Zoom call with those medical professionals and heard example after example of situations where the system was not keeping up with pace. After that meeting, I had pulled together a panel of 6 local medical professionals, diverse medical professionals, to have an individual conversation related to what I'm going to share with you tonight, and talk a little bit about our specific situation and some of their perspectives on our layers of protection that are in place or could be in place. Here's what they had consensus around. They were absolutely clear. There was consensus around the fact that the vaccine really is the path forward for moving out of this virus. There was almost 100% agreement around that specific topic, with some debate. But they tend to agree that masks aren't necessarily the long-term solution, but that a vaccinated population is. The other thing that they talked about with some consensus agreement was the fact that the healthcare system was overwhelmed. Even though locally there were beds, when patients are overly or are critical and they have to go to a nearby hospital, typically that's Nationwide Children's Hospital, they shared stories of of children having to be redirected to either Akron or Toledo in some cases. So they referenced and contextualized a little bit of what we heard on the Zoom call with the governor and the Nationwide Children's Hospital's representatives. What they did not agree on was masks. And so they shared different perspectives, different data points, but I think in the end, one medical professional said, you know, when there's ambiguity, you look at the consensus of the medical profession. And so they have certain groups and bodies that they look to reference and get their data sources from, and the consensus of the medical profession is clearly advocating for the utilizations of masks in Ohio right now. So that was the conversation that we had with the medical professionals sharing our local data. And I'm going to share some of that data here in a little bit. And then the other thing that I wanted to highlight was the challenge that we had related to the contact tracing process and quarantining process over the first month of school. That is not because we weren't prepared. It was because legislation changed and had certain aspects of the contact tracing process that were now the responsibility of the Licking County Health Department, where last year that was within our control and purview. So anytime you introduce another loop into a process, it can cause problems. So working collaboratively with the Licking County Health Department, And our team, we put together a little bit more of a streamlined process, and it's been working effectively since we made some tweaks about 2 weeks in. And everybody has the same goal of keeping students in school as much as possible. We are required by law to participate in the contact tracing process. It is not something that we are doing just because Granville Schools wants to do it. It is something that we are required to do by law, and utilizing the Licking County Health Department's processes and protocols. That local context has some challenges, but it also has some benefits. The benefits are the fact that we can contact our local health commissioner and have conversations about what's happening specifically in Granville on a daily basis. And I can tell you that he's responsive, and he is always looking at the same data that we are, and if it's not the same data, we have that conversation about what is he seeing versus what are we seeing. But the contact tracing process was not ideal at the beginning of the year, and I know it caused some frustration and challenges for parents, as well as our staff, the teachers, the administrators. I can share with you that from an administrative standpoint, they are not doing much academic work at this time. They are contact tracing almost exclusively during the day. It is a somewhat laborious process, and it is challenging. So, but it is something that we are required to do. So what I'd like to do is talk to you a little bit about this graph from Licking County Health Department. So what you are seeing here are the total active cases and the trajectory over the last several weeks. The red line that you see here is the trend data that we have from last year. So I'm going to tell you, and most of you probably already understand this, that when you establish a trend line, you want to have multiple years of data to create that baseline. You don't want to rely on one data set as your baseline. Unfortunately, with COVID, we don't have the ability to have trend data that goes back 3 years. That's fortunate and unfortunate. So from a data standpoint, we have 1 year's worth of data to compare daily totals to. What you are seeing here is a dramatic increase in COVID positive cases in Licking County. And what that has resulted in is some situations around the county that have required school districts to do some type of building closures or go to remote, and has caused some challenges to the educational system responding to that increase in positive cases. What I would like to do is take this data, contextualize it, and then share with you some of the information specific to our school district boundary. So I know that's very hard to read, so I apologize, but it is, what you are seeing is that same trend line that was present in the previous slide. This is a little bit more contextualized to Granville schools from last year, not just Licking County. But you can see that the trend is pretty close to what you saw in Licking County. The orange bars are the 18 and older COVID positive cases. The blue bars are the school age population of students that have had active cases. As you can see, we started out relatively low when we started measuring this year. And then at about week 34, we started to see an increase. Week 35 was definitely a challenge. We saw a significant increase in the number of cases. Then it started to drop, although the adult population started to increase. But if we were to show you a graph of where we are right now, we are about at 17 cases as a district for the beginning of this year. So we have seen kind of a little bit of a yo-yo type of pattern here, where we had a high of almost 19 cases and then some lows, and now we're seeing another increase. So all of this is something that we are monitoring daily, looking for anything that can be connected to certain cases that would cause us pause or to increase our layers of protection. Just today, we had 6 positive cases at the intermediate school, and we did see some signs of transmission and spread within the school environment. That is something that we have been trying to avoid through our layers of protection, and we do have some indications that we are not trending in the right direction. I would also say that the pattern from last year to this year has changed dramatically. Last year, we saw the overwhelming number of positive cases occurring at the middle school and high school level. That is not the case this year. This year, we have had the majority of our cases at the lower levels, K3 and 4-6, at GES and GIS. Again, some of that is due to other factors related to things that have happened within our local school district boundary, and I'll reference some of those in a little bit. So right now, this is literally as of 5 o'clock today. We have 3 cases at the elementary, 9 cases at the intermediate school, 2 cases at the middle school, and 3 cases at the high school, for a total of 17 positive cases. We have 0 cases except for 1 case at the high school. Again, I would remind you that we made the decision to institute a mask mandate in our school staff population for a variety of different reasons, but most importantly, we need to keep our teachers in our schools. We do not have substitutes. We do not have extra bus drivers. We do not have as many custodians as we need right now. We, just like all the other sectors of business, are struggling with maintaining personnel. So the other thing that I would call your attention to is the number of quarantines. The number of quarantines right now is 55 students, and some of that might not even capture what happened at the end of the day today with another case. So we have had a high of 125 or 127 students in quarantine, and what that does is challenge the entire staff to respond to a number of students that are out because of being COVID positive or being in quarantine. Again, we are not necessarily offering the same Zoom capacity that we did last year. We are providing asynchronous materials, but we are also having our teachers reach out to students because we know that personal connection matters in the learning process. So, our current cases, we're monitoring this every single day. I have to tip my hat to, if I was wearing one, to our nursing staff. Gina Burdick, our district nurse, and all of our nurses at the buildings do a fantastic job of working with parents to get cases medically confirmed quickly so that we can contact trace and potentially get students who are carrying some type of viral load out of the school in an efficient manner. So again, our goal is to keep students in school. Last week, on Tuesday, we wanted to take a mask census. So I asked all of our parents to designate your mask status at the beginning of the year. That was just to get an indication of our percentage of masks happening in our schools. But honestly, from a contact tracing perspective, every single day, our teachers are taking daily attendance and mask attendance. Because every single day we have to go back and check whether students are wearing that mask and wearing it properly in the contact tracing process. So as you can see, we have 58% of our population at the elementary that is currently wearing masks. At GIS, we have 68%, and then at GMS and GHS, we have a lower percentage. Obviously, some of that is based on the fact that middle school and high school students are able to get vaccinated. Total district aggregate is about half of our population is currently wearing masks. We have seen with the volume of cases that we have had specifically at the intermediate school, an increase in mask wearing as parents are informed of the potential of COVID being either within the building or within the classroom. We've tried to do a better job not to alarm parents through that notification process by letting them know that we're required to send home building letters and have a dashboard and send home classroom notification by law. But what we're trying to do is say the people that are impacted have already been contacted so that parents don't get the letter, and I would do the exact same thing, panic, to make sure, or to, if my child was potentially exposed to the virus. So that is kind of our current mask status for the district. That was, again, a snapshot of one day, Tuesday, second period. The other thing that I would reference is the fact that our vaccination rate in 43023 has increased since the beginning of the school. At the beginning of the school year, it was 68%. Right now, it's closer to 71%, and it's increasing. And again, as the medical professionals, I'm not a medical professional, suggested that vaccination is the pathway forward to move through. Ultimately, our goal is to try and get to the point where the virus is not as impactful. It is always going to be with us, but getting to the point where our population can tolerate it without overwhelming the healthcare system, I think is the end goal of the medical professionals. Our end goal, obviously, is to keep kids in school. And I think with the vaccine not being available at the K-6 level, the increase in cases, we have seen more cases at the elementary than we did all last year in total in the first month of school. So my job is to make sure that the layers of protection are there for the safety and welfare of our students. And so tonight I'm going to ask the board to consider a mask mandate at the K-6 level until a vaccine is available. Until a vaccine is available and implemented. Obviously, our goal is to not have students masked. It is a challenge for some of our students. It is a challenge for some of our staff. And ultimately, we want to recognize that the human connection of learning is important, and students need to be able to see facial expressions and the formation of words and language via the face, and that's as important in the learning process as anything else. But we also have to, help think about the long-term benefit to getting past this moment in time. We would still have masks or exemptions for medical and religious-based reasons, as previously stipulated in our return to school plan. And I believe that if contact tracing rules are modified in Licking County, that would also impact our K-6 vaccination or our quarantine numbers as well. We are talking on a regular basis with the Licking County health officials to try and use some of their data to support a refinement of the quarantining process. If you look at the data would suggest that we are potentially over-identifying students in quarantine right now. And so there is some benefit to that, but there are some also significant negatives because students are out of the classroom environment. So I know that they are going to be talking about that in an upcoming board meeting as well, and we have had and made recommendations to the Licking County Health Department. So that is the conclusion of my staff report related to the start of the school year. There is one more thing that we want to make a statement around, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Corman, and then I will conclude those comments.
Great. Thank you. Just want to take a moment to talk about our district's vision statement, which is, graduates of the Granville Exempted Village School District are well prepared and empowered to be thoughtful, productive, and contributing members of their communities, and are equipped with the critical thinking skills and self-sufficiency necessary for success in our ever-changing world. As we work to meet this vision, we expect our staff to model and for the children to exhibit and embrace the values of acceptance, inclusion, and compassion. We as a school district feel that we have successfully incorporated all of these values while upholding the vision of our district. We appreciate the teachers who consistently and masterfully instruct our students. Our staff is committed to creating an inclusive environment for all of our students and families.
Thank you, Dr. Corman. Our experienced staff spend time analyzing and studying national and state standards, quality children's literature, and district-approved curriculum. As a team, they work collaboratively to develop units and lesson plans that align accordingly. The unit on families was planned using the aforementioned criteria while incorporating literature that is developmentally appropriate for all students. The learning focus for the thematic unit is to celebrate diversity that all families bring, while providing representation for the various family dynamics that exist in and outside of our community. Our Ohio Social Studies and Social Emotional Learning Standards both reference inclusion of diverse concepts into instructional units, including identifying norms for various family and social situations, and demonstrating an awareness and respect for human dignity, including the similarities and differences of all people, groups, and cultures. The board and administration support the teaching of the family unit and the teachers in promoting inclusivity, acceptance, and empathy.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We have now reached the part of our agenda where we will entertain public comment. Please, if you would, I'm going to actually, sorry, we felt like there was a lot of people who wanted to speak tonight, so I took a list of names. So I will read your name, and then you can come to the podium and speak for 3 to 5 minutes. If you came in after names were collected and still wanted to say something, we will allow you to do that too. But I just wanted to also remind the audience that the board and administration, as a matter of policy and practice, do not discuss personnel matters during public comment, so please refrain from mentioning individuals during your comments. The first person on the list is Mark Carr. I'm also going to ask if we can refrain from like cheering and clapping, otherwise we might be here for a very long time. I know we all feel very passionate about these things, but I want the people at the podium to be heard, and then also that we can move on to the other parts of our meeting as well. So that would be great. Thanks.
Good evening, board and administrators. My name is Mark Carr. I am the president of Granville Pride, which is a newly formed 503c born out of the desire that Granville showed from the previous Granville Pride that we had with nearly 1,000 in attendance. And I'm also a father to Mary Ellen, who is in 2nd grade at GES, and Tristan, who is in 1st grade at GES. I will share with you tonight that I'm here to speak as a father. But I'll share with you, in my family, I'm not called father. In my family, I'm called daddy. My husband is called Dada. You see, I'm married, gay, to my husband Rex, who's a teacher here in the district, and my family is one mentioned in the family unit. And I'll share with you that I'm really excited right now because I'm not going to say what I was going to say before you just said what you just said. and heard explosive cheers. But what I will do is share with you I'm here in support of teachers, not because I'm married to one, but because I used to be one, and I understand the impact they make. And I understand that you have a hard job as well as a board, and so I appreciate you all. I will share tonight, though, that I am in here in anticipation of a petition that was signed calling for the removal of this unit. And I know you all know about that. And I'll share with you that when I sat down to write some words, the words that came were pretty anger-filled. Like, who do you think you are? And why do you think you're better? And my child, just like yours, deserves representation. But again, that's changed from the words you just said. But in anticipation of that petition, I still sat down and wanted to write some words. And during my break that was sort of filled with anger, I got a cup of coffee, and sure enough, as fate would have it, I received a message, and it said, "Mr. Carr, can you do something for me?" And I said, "Sure." And she said, "I'm unable to attend tonight's board meeting, and I really want to speak, but I'm at home quarantined because of COVID with my family." And so I told her that I would read her message to you all, and so that's what I'm going to do now, with your permission. To whom it may concern, please accept this letter as we are currently quarantined and cannot
Mark,
attend
just a
today's
minute.
meeting.
Wait, I'm sorry, do we
Yeah.
need to know who this is from?
If it's public comment, we actually have
Sure.
to know who it's from, and typically it's the person at the podium speaking, not relaying a message from someone else. So, more of a technicality, but if you could, either share the person's name.
Sure,
but
I'll share their name.
Typically.
Sure, yes, I have her permission. TJ and Corey McFarland. To whom it may concern, please accept this letter as we are currently quarantined and cannot attend today's meeting. I would like to make a statement as a community member as well as a parent with children in the school system. I will make it as simple as I possibly can so it can be understood by those who are agitated today by the existence of reality. I have twin sons, both of which are wonderful and loving humans. One loves to fish, the other one does not. One is gay, the other is straight. One is tall, and one is short. One may grow up and marry a man and adopt children. The other may grow up and marry a woman and give child by birth. If they choose these paths, they will be creating two equally beautiful and loving families. You simply may not remove one family because you feel or believe a certain way. That is not how real life works. If you are here to claim that a kindergartner is unable to comprehend all family units, then you are either completely underestimating your child's abilities or it's an excuse to keep certain happy families from making you personally feel uncomfortable during a discussion you feel you must have with your child. Thank you, school board and teachers, for knowing that uncomfortable feelings don't outweigh the importance of a child obtaining information as basic as the fact that many times of wonderful families exist. Thank you, TJ and Corey McFarland. And again,
Your time has expired. Thank
What's
you.
that?
Your time has expired.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm handwriting challenged, so Dar Compton, did I say your name correctly?
Hi there, my name is Dar Compton, and I am a parent of 5 children who graduated from Granville schools. I am a foster parent of 55 children, many of who went to Granville schools, and now my grandson is a kindergartner in a wonderful kindergarten class at Granville schools. I am here speaking regarding Granville Pride on behalf of Granville Pride, and like Mr. Carr said, much of what I had to say has very joyfully been needed to be set aside because of the board's proclamation. But what I do want to say is that I and Granville Pride support the teachers of Granville and the heart and the work that they put into what they do on behalf of our students. I appreciate the inclusivity that is being supported, not just in Granville schools, but by the proclamation that the Granville Village made last summer, or last spring. And then just want to say that we understand that there's a small group of parents expressing concern about the material presented, in the family unit taught this past week. And Granville Pride stands with the teachers, and they stand with the school. The teachers are highly qualified, and as a parent of a very diverse family, a foster, adoptive, biological kids, the importance of recognizing each of those diverse pieces is so important to me and so important to Granville Pride. So we really just want to commend you for supporting the teachers and for honoring all students in the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Barb Lechner.
Thank you for letting me speak about this position. My name is Barb Lechner, and I live at 41 Denison Court in Granville, Ohio. And I want to thank you, Mark, and your husband for adopting 2 children. There are currently in Ohio 16,000 children in Ohio who live in foster homes or out-of-home settings. Some of those children are waiting to be adopted, and some of them are going to be in foster care for probably their whole life. I had foster children for 10 years and understand the commitment involved that Mark and his partner have made. Most of the children in foster care aren't eligible for adoption. And it broke, at the end, when the child went back home, it broke my heart to have to return them to an unstable home. And it also infuriated me when I found out that they were back in foster care in some cases. My cousin Bill adopted a boy who had been in a group home waiting for an adoption, and he had sucked off his fingernails in the group home because he was not given the care, sensitive caregiving that he needed to have in a family. Abuse and neglect are the 2 main reasons children are put in foster care. Abuse and neglect lead to children with diminished brains, actually in size. If a child isn't given sensitive caregiving, its brain does not develop correctly. After 2 years of being in a family, a house like that, you cannot rebuild that brain. It's always going to be deficient. So I'm here to tell you that there are 348 kids in foster care in Licking County, and most of them are in foster care because of opioids and meth addiction. And I also want to tell the people that are here without masks on that in the last 74 hours, there were 19,000 new cases of COVID. Thank you.
Thank you. Lane Schultz.
Hi, I'm Lane Stoltz, and I'm a senior at Granville High School. Well, all these speeches have said very amazing things, and I completely agree with all of them, and I'm so happy that you guys have decided to let the family unit lesson stay. But I do want to address some misconceptions that some people in the audience may have about this lesson. Learning about homosexual parents will not turn your children gay. That is one misconception that I've heard a lot. And I just want to say I grew up in a home with straight parents, surrounded by straight media. I mean, I didn't even know a gay couple till I was out of the closet. And I think representation is very important. And I feel like for all those children out there who have families that may be different, I feel like it is very important for them to not feel alienated in the classroom. And so I think that what you guys have done here is very amazing. Thank you.
Robert Moore.
Thank you for granting me admission to speak. If it's okay, I'll face the crowd because I think I need to clear some things up. For everyone who came up here before me, I want you to know that I do love you. I have no hate in my heart for any of you. I don't think I'm any better than anyone else. I do have different views that come from my faith, for me and my family, and I think that that's okay and that should be permitted. I fully embrace you making your own decisions. That doesn't mean that I hate you. If it's okay, I would like to read what I have to say because I know I'd get choked up. I love you all. Nothing that I said came from a place of hate. In order to understand my concern, you need to know my daughter. She is the most beautiful, innocent, loving, kind, and sensitive person I know. I have never met a more selfless person at such a young age. Sorry. She is a warrior. She has a lot of anxiety. I haven't even explained to her that my own parents are divorced yet because I know her, and she will worry that we will get divorced as well. She's not ready for these conversations, period. I get to make that decision. The only option that I was provided with would have made her feel like an outcast. I would have been happy with the remote learning at home for the duration of the unit, but we would have been marked as absent even though we just came off quarantine for 2 weeks and no one cared then. I thought there had to be a better way and more parents who felt that we could teach about family at home. So I emailed the classroom with my polite objection if you read it. I did cite same-sex marriage as an added layer of complexity to these sensitive discussions that I personally feel parents alone should be responsible for having with their children. The question today goes beyond which books we read in the classroom. Are we allowed to raise any objections in your classroom without fear of retaliation and being quickly silenced as an opposing opinion? I didn't violate any of your rights or impose any of my views on you. I simply protected my and my daughter's rights. I was sent proof that my email and petition with my name on it were posted on a radical Facebook group by a teacher to muster resistance against me, and then received a slanderous phone call at work because of this. That violates my freedom of speech. That's slander. That's not equal protection under the law. This school does not deserve my daughter.
Steph Przinski.
Hi, I'm Steph Przinski and the mother of 2 students in the Granville School District. I will shorten my comments because of some of the comments the board made. I'm also the daughter of a retired teacher, so I want to start by saying I hold educators and education in extremely high regard, and I've had a wonderful experience with my students in the school district, so thank you. I guess I came here today now to just share that I fully support the decision you made on the inclusive curriculum in the family unit, and thank you for that decision. I think it's really important that our children are taught that there are many different family structures and compositions, and that all of those are valued and important in our community. Thank you.
That was a carryover. You still have a minute.
Okay.
Sorry. I didn't hit the stop button.
You're fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come on, Mr. Brown.
I know. Rookie mistake.
Julie, is it York? Okay.
Hello. First of all, thank you so much for your words of affirmation and your support that you shared earlier. My name is Julie York, and I'm the parent of a current kindergartner as well as a freshman at the high school. And I want to applaud and thank and encourage our kindergarten teachers to continue to uphold the work deemed valuable and necessary by Granville schools. As you guys just shared with us, under the Granville Schools website, we've stated that as our values, we want our staff to model and our children to exhibit and embrace these values. And the very first one listed is acceptance and inclusion, followed by compassion. I appreciate the kindergarten teachers implementing a family unit that aligns to these values. Every one of us have families that look different from one another, and that's okay. These differences should not be shamed, but celebrated and embraced, which in turn will help our children value and appreciate themselves, their families, and their community at large. This will further foster a community of learners who care about others without judgments that are toxic and harmful. There are some who have been arguing parents are the only ones who can talk about social issues, wishing instead to diminish their children's capacities for openness and acceptance, and suggesting that school is not the place for this safe discussion, which is entirely untrue. Don't ask our teachers to fix problems at school, as they've been asked for so long to do, and then take away their agency to support and teach our children the ability to navigate this world in humane ways. Teachers are an integral part of intellectual education, emotional education, and social education of our students. And I fully trust teachers to navigate important life issues with our students and empower them to think about their world in loving and accepting ways. It's only when this happens that we'll bend the arc of the universe towards justice. Thank you.
Is it Boaz? Elaine Boaz? And if I say your name wrong, please correct me.
Good evening. My name is Elaine Boaz, and I am a retired teacher of 37 years, 28 of which I taught kindergarten and first grade, none of which were in Granville. And I'd like to thank you for your support of the family unit and for honoring the bond that happens between teachers and their students. And that bond is central to as you know, is central to the successful learning environment. And it's built on trust. And that trust only happens when there's honesty and there's empathy. And by your allowing that family unit to take place, you're helping to make that happen. To maintain that trust, teachers need to be truthful and they need to be respectful toward all of their students. Every student needs to feel valued and recognized in his or her classroom. When discussions about family structures take place, as you know, it has to be inclusive. We have to honor children's experiences. We have to recognize their reality. Thank you for making that so.
Thank you. Rana O'Day.
Hello, board members and Superintendent Brown. Thank you for your stance as a board to continue teaching the family unit as it currently is taught, and thank you to our teachers. I appreciate your inclusivity very much and your dedication and the time you take to go to trainings and educate yourselves so that you can bring our curriculum up to date to the 21st century to be inclusive of all families and inclusive of all people. And I'd like to just say something as a mother. My child asked me, so I have a kindergartner, a second grader, and a preschooler. My child last year, before he was even in preschool, very simply asked me, "Can two men marry each other?" And I said yes. And that was the end of the discussion at that time. It's very simple. It's not about sexual orientation. They're picture books. They just show pictures of all families. And And I think that's very necessary for these times to be inclusive, so that all students can feel represented and be prepared for the real world and see families that exist in the real world, so that they're not so confused when they see my friends, 2 men holding hands or 2 women holding hands. It's more confusing if they don't already know that that's okay. So to teach them at a very young age, when it's very innocent, is much easier for them to comprehend. And also, we are a public school, and I strongly believe that the public schools serve public interest, represent the entire community, not a specific person's cultural or religious beliefs. Thank you.
Robin Brown.
Thank you for your meeting tonight and for the K through 6 masking. I think that'll really help prevent spread of COVID in the schools. And thank you also for your statement earlier. I just wanted to remind very quickly that the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights confirmed June 16th, 2021, that it will enforce Title IX protections. It will protect students from discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity, and it will include protection of representation in books from discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you. Bree McShane. Is Bree here? Bree McShane. Okay. Jody Melfi. Okay, thank you. Kristen Fox.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to say a few words. My name is Kristen Fox, and I first want to express my gratitude to the board, the administration, the staff, and most of all the teachers for your dedication to our children, particularly over the past 18 months. We choose to send our children to Granville schools because we have the utmost faith and trust in our teachers, and I know you have their best interests at heart. Like others, I came here initially to speak in support of our kindergarten teachers, and in particular in response to the recent criticism. And like others, I want to thank the board for your proclamation. But I still want to show that support. I am an educator myself, having spent the past 2 decades researching and working in education, and in particular, student development. I am also the mother of 2 children, both 4th graders at GIS. And since I'm on the record, I should mention that they love their GIS experience, all of their teachers. And that started when they first came to kindergarten here at the school. As an educator, I sent them wanting to love to learn, feel included, and have a good experience. And that started day 1 in our kindergarten here at school. And as for my family, some people may consider us non-traditional. I am the mother of, as I said, 2 children. One was adopted, one is biological. One has a birth mom. One has a gay mom. One has my DNA, one doesn't. One grew up under my heart, the other in my heart. But they are both my children, and they are brother and sister. My greatest fear is that my child through adoption would be made to feel different, abnormal, or less than because they were adopted. And when they went off to kindergarten, I worried constantly how others would make my child feel. And I am so grateful that from their start of this Granville education, our kindergarten teachers talked about and recognized all types of families, because kids should never be made to feel out of place, different, or left out, especially at the hands of a school. and to either not include all families or to only talk about certain family structures, whether it be adoptive families, children of divorce, foster families, or families of same-sex parents. To ignore that is silencing the existence of those families. And to not talk about all types of families not only dismisses them, but it leads to potential exclusivity, preferential treatment, and future bias. Schools have that responsibility to make sure all kids are accepted, and I am grateful to the board tonight for your proclamation. I am grateful to our kindergarten teachers because from the beginning they have emphasized acceptance, inclusion, and compassion, just like in our value statement. Thank you.
Chris, I'm sorry, I can't read your handwriting. Clearly, I'm not a teacher. McLee? Thank you. Sorry.
I'd like to thank everybody for letting me speak. So this is more on the masks. So Granville used to be a school district where people came because of higher education it provided. That's why we came. Since COVID, the actions of our leaders in the district and the community have further divided the community to get to the point it cheapened the education for the taxpayers' children, not to mention making a mockery of our community. You say that when we're basing it on data, or basing the data on facts, that's truth. Truth is what everyone believes to be fact. We cannot say the sky is blue, right? How can you make a decision for our kids based on things that are not fact? You said one school meeting that you knew no one was infected other students in the classroom because they had on masks. How did you know that? Did you know that? How did you see those coronaviruses flying through the air and sitting on the students at that time? You said that that didn't happen in the lunchrooms. How's that possible? Where's the science in that at all? You also said there were 6 doctors saying the coronavirus, or saying there was a consensus to the coronavirus. A consensus means a general agreement. That's not true. There was not a general agreement in that meeting. There were 6 doctors. 3 of them did not agree with the masks. So if you're going to base it on fact, let's base it on the facts. You also said currently there are 34% of the high school students not wearing masks. But the virus is low in the high school students. That doesn't make any sense. You also said there's 68% of the Granville students.
Excuse me, he's speaking, so please.
The GIS students are wearing masks, but yet the spread is high. There's no correlation to this at all. So here's something you can get from the website, and it's a mask optional school district compared to mask mandatory. So there's new students to accumulative students on both. So Licking Valley High School, 17 new students, 27 accumulative. Bexley City, 6 to 23. So that means that optional mask students are high in this case, but let's work our way down. 41 to 103 in Lancaster, and Groveport Madison's 48 to 134. So that means it's higher with people that are wearing masks. There's no sense to this. In Crooksville Assumpted, there's no reported cases, but yet there's 18 accumulative. In Franklin Local, there's 3 that this is the area that they're mandatory, and 23 that are cumulative. It's higher than the ones that are not wearing masks. So we'll also go on to this right here, which you guys should have a copy of this. It's the student accumulative cases across there. Required for some students, cases per 100 students is 1.3. Required for all students, cases per 100 students, 1.3. For optional students, cases per 100 students, 1.5. There's a 0.2 difference between these. Okay? If we go to, there was Jan Weiss. He's saying because mask inhibits communications and school social development. Mask dehumanizes us, ironically serves as a constant reminder that we should be afraid. People can now be spotted wearing masks while camping by themselves in woods and also solo sailing trip. They have become cruel devices on young children everywhere. Kindergarten students covering by mask and isolating by plexiglass, struggling to understand social expressions of their peers. Face coverings cause real harm to the American psyche, provide little to no benefit, and distract us from more important health policy issues. That's one. I can go on.
Your time has expired.
Thank you.
Jeremy King?
Good evening. My name's Jeremy King. I'm a graduate of Granville, class of 1993. Good to be back up here, born and raised in Granville. I have a third grader. I wasn't sure what I was going to say today, but based on how this meeting has gone, I guess I can say thank you, board, for the time and energy that you've spent on the two issues that have been discussed so far this evening. I know that it's hard work. I appreciate all the work that you do, and I appreciate all the work that our teachers are doing to make this a successful school year, given very trying times. I also very much appreciate the proclamation that you have made regarding diversity and inclusion in our schools. I'd like to mention a few things about masks. I lead Denison's COVID mitigation team. I do all of our contact tracing at Denison. I promise you I'm not going to pick and choose data and facts. I can tell you a fact. My son is a student, a third grader at Granville. My son wears a mask consistently. My son had to quarantine this year because of the lunchroom. All of those are facts. My son was virtual all of last year. That was a choice that we made as a family because at the time, we did not like the policies that Granville had set forth in terms of distancing in the classroom. I understood why you did it, and I appreciate the fact that you pulled off an incredible year last year. And I thank you very much for the work that you did for those students that were in school and virtual. I can tell you, fact, my son thus far has shown no ill consequences of wearing a mask, and he wears a mask all the time. In fact, we have to remind him to take his mask off when he's at soccer practice, which he's there right now. Long story short, you said at the beginning of you said back in the board August meeting that you weren't going to have a mask mandate for our schools. I disagreed with you at the time, but I understood why you were doing that, and I respected your decision. I respected that you were doing at the time what you felt was in the best interest of all students at Granville, and I appreciate that. You also said that you would let the data play itself out, and you would wait and see what happened with COVID in our community. And unfortunately, COVID is spreading. And I'm pleased that you are putting forth here for board consideration a K-6 mask mandate because the data is showing us that it's necessary. Thank you for your time, and I hope that you truly do vote on this and consider it. Thank you.
Chris Kenna? Chris Kenna. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Chris Kanawha, 339 West Broadway, and I'm enjoying the results of this meeting. I'd like to follow up on what was just said here a little more. My children all graduated from Granville 20 to 25 years ago. They gained from the discussions and the encouragement of honest and open conversations, discussions. And I think the point I want to make is living in reality is so critical today. I mean, I think it's so easy to get facts that you want to believe. But science, and I am a scientist, require a peer review it requires a hypothesis and a judgment of whether that hypothesis works with addition of new data. So your proclamation is wonderful because it keeps our kids, young and older, working in reality, working with what the world is today. And the first bullet point on your summary shows that the board is going to use some new data, as the previous speaker said, and looking at the data, saying, well, maybe we don't need to do it, but the data says we do. And now you're going to consider that. That's a wonderful example of how real science and real knowledge works. And I thank you for that.
Michael Supp.
Thank you. My name is Michael Supp. I live at 102 Chapin Place. I'm here for myself and on behalf of my wife, Sarah, who's putting her children to bed right now. I have a kindergartner in the district, and mostly two reasons I'm here tonight. First and foremost, I'd like to thank our fantastic kindergarten teachers. My daughter is a kindergartner in the district, and my wife and I could not be more happy with the quality of education she's receiving. Thank you for reaffirming the diversity and inclusion statement. That's a thank you to the board as well. You know, I'm here today to support them. I think our community needs to get behind them. And I think arbitrarily calling for terminations and resignations is unkind and uncivil. Our kindergarten teachers deserve our respect, and as a community, we need to show that. I also stand in favor of motion 10.02 that would give Superintendent Brown the necessary agility to handle this fluid situation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Gwyneth, is it Tomerhuff?
Hi, my name is Gwyneth Camara Huff. I'm here as a community member, a 1985 graduate, and the parent of a 2014 graduate. This is not easy for me to share with the board, but I'm here because I believe it is so important that Granville does stick to its stated mission and does support all of our children, and it needs to start in kindergarten with a basic understanding that there are different families and different people. Because when that doesn't happen, then you have situations that, like what happened to my child in this district, where we moved, my child was going into 5th grade. Within 3 months of moving here, my child was being called the F word, a gay slur, on a regular basis by other students. My son was being touched in private areas by other students. I went to the counselor. I said, we need to stop this word being used. The counselor said the kids are too young to understand sexuality. I'm not going to talk to them about gay sex. I said, I'm not asking you to talk to them about gay sex. I agree with you. They're too young to talk about sex at all in that way. But nothing was done. And it went on to create years of bullying, physical assaults, and terminating with sexual assault in high school of my child by another male student, which I never learned about until my child was in college, and not just starting college, but a couple years into college, and I've been given permission to share this. because my child is too scared to speak right now. My child is scared to be in Granville still, to this day, in many locations. And honestly, I feel that that could have been completely avoided if things had been taken care of in 5th grade with some basic understanding. And if we had done a better job of those children that were already in the district coming up through elementary school and understanding and respecting differences, that these situations would not happen to our children. And my child too, I feel for the father who stood up here and said, I wish I could talk to him personally. Because my child was one of the kindest, most empathetic feeling people as well. And the main reason that my child got called that word was because my child, as an at that point male-bodied person, stood up for girls. It was specifically in a unit in social studies about careers. And some girl said that she wanted to be a hockey player. And a bunch of the boys said, you can't do that, girls can't do that, there are no female hockey players. And my child, being somewhat impetuous, kind of ADHD, jumped up on a desk, not necessarily appropriate, and said girls can be whatever they want as long as they have the interest, the skill, and the training. And that's what started the whole thing. That's what started it. So we need to do a better job. We need to continue truly honoring diversity and inclusion. And we need to do a better job with our counselors of understanding ways to deal with aggression. If someone had called my child an N-word, that would not have been tolerated. But because it was seen as being a sexual thing, all the kids needed to be told was that's not an acceptable word to use, period. They didn't need to go into it further. They just needed to be told that wasn't acceptable. Thank you.
Fletcher, Tamara Huff.
Fletcher Camara Huff, 445 North Pearl Street. It's good to see you all this evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I too want to thank you for reaffirming the diversity statement. If there were petitions circulating saying, I don't want my child to learn about black families or Jewish families unless there's actually a black family or Jewish family in the classroom, this would be a very different conversation. But that is where we are at this present time. There's a conversation about should children know that families can have 2 fathers, 2 mothers. We're also at a moment where people don't want science and historical facts taught in schools. But we have to stand with science. We have to stick with historical facts. There are other pushes to eliminate the teaching of American history that mentions our history of racism, our history of genocide against Native people. There are currently people who think that scientific facts, daily case counts, don't actually exist. So I know you have some tough decisions ahead of you, but I would encourage you to educate, not indoctrinate. That's a rallying cry of people who oppose teaching historical facts, scientific facts, facts of diversity. But education means saying that yes, gay people exist, black people deserve rights, Jewish people were subject to the Holocaust, there was a Native American genocide. COVID-19 is real, evolution does in fact happen, and not wearing masks allows the virus to spread and mutate. So it's going to be tough to be on the school board right now. And I commend you to please stand for education. Thank you.
Heather McCoy.
I'll make this short and sweet because I agree with a lot of the people that spoke before me. But I just wanted to speak here today to say I have a kindergarten and I'm here to show support for the teachers and the family unit curriculum to remain inclusive, just like you guys have already proclaimed. So thank you for that. The message my daughter brought home was families are different, but they all revolve around love. I think that is an age-appropriate concept for a kindergartner to understand. It's my job as a parent to teach my daughter our personal family values so that she can navigate life making choices based on those morals I guide her towards. It's the school's job to represent all individuals of the student body equally and without bias, including their differing family experiences. I thank you for keeping this inclusive message in our school and hope you continue to keep representation for all students in mind. Thank you.
And Jackie Chico. Jackie? No? Okay. That is the end of the people who have signed up. Is there anybody else who would like to address the board at this time? Please approach the podium, state your name and address, and you can speak for 3 to 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Sabrina Warner. My address is 1618 Loudon Street, Granville, Ohio 43023. What was your other question that I needed to?
No, name and address, and then three minutes.
Thank you. Just wanted you to know your COVID cases will probably increase because everybody's spit and germs have been on here today. I, too, actually have 2 children that have 2 moms and 2 dads. I'm not sure why that matters, but I would like that stated. I'm actually here to address the family lesson that you all are talking about. A teacher has many responsibilities depending on the grade he or she is teaching. For the subject matter tonight, discussing the kindergarten lesson that pertains to family, I looked on the Ohio Department of Education, and nowhere could I find where it instructs a kindergarten teacher to create lessons on how family is created, how a family comes together, how a family is structured, how a family is to look, or how a family should behave. I also could not find where it says that a teacher has a responsibility to teach a child how a family is created, how a family comes together, how a family is instructed, how a family looks, or how a family should behave, or how he or she should view a family. Nor could I find where it says that a teacher should bring forth such a subject. This subject matter does not create within a kindergarten a need for readiness, as the Ohio Department of Education states. A teacher has a responsibility to not only teach a child what is within the state guidelines, but also to protect and encourage all children. If the subject matter of a family is going to be given in Granville, and in such a time as this, it should also include but not limit itself to what all religions believe a family should look like, how a family is created, how a family should behave, and how a family is structured. And because each teacher is not legally allowed to teach about such religious matters, therefore, the family subject should be removed from the classroom. Until we come to a place where all families matter, there should be no such subject taught. Teachers are bound to a contract that limits them to what subjects they can teach about, and the subject on family is currently not a subject matter they can teach on unbiasedly. I would also add that parents should have the confidence to know that they can come to a teacher, superintendent, and/or principal with a concern and be heard without being chastised or threatened by a hate group. You as a school board and you as teachers and in places of authority must draw a hard line when it comes to such subject matters. Your personal opinions should not get in the way of protecting our children. You as adults are creating distracting and hateful times for our children, and when you cause a child to stumble, your penalty is lethal. Mr. Brown, I would say to you, you are earning your paycheck, and I hope that you will stop being such a fence rider. Thank you.
Sorry. Would anybody else like to address the board at this time? No? Okay. We will move on in the agenda then. Oh.
school board members, and Superintendent Brown. Thank you for all that you've done from the beginning of this school year. I know your job is hard. I wouldn't want to be sitting in your place. Can you hear me?
Your name, please?
Name and Yes, Erica Timmons, 2006 Berg Street. And I just want to say before I start that I love these teachers sitting over here. We've been here since my kids were small. I've had many of these teachers and interacted with them. My kids have loved them. I appreciate and commend them for all that they do. I don't come before you here tonight with any hate or malice towards anyone whose lifestyle choices differ from my own. We teach our children to be kind and respectful to anyone and everyone, regardless of the situation. I am here in defense of the right for family discussions to be handled by just that, the family of the student. I am concerned at what's been going on at the kindergarten level at Granville schools simply because it infringes on parent ability to have these discussions with our kids at an appropriate age. We should be concerned on both sides of the aisle here of the individuality that teachers appear to possess. Although I disagree with the content being presented, I am more concerned about the autonomy of teachers to instruct and insert their ideas into a format, regardless of what tax-paying citizens of this district have to say. When did we stop having logical conversations about the long-term effects on our kids and community and proceed straight to shaming and name-calling and attempting to remove people from their jobs, affecting the livelihood of their families? We on both sides here should be concerned about this issue because it won't be long before something comes along where a teacher is inserting her personal ideas about a nuclear family being just a mom or a dad or a Christian family. I have a feeling the roles in this room would be reversed here tonight. My goal has always been for the advancement and better world for our children, and I think getting them involved in these discussions can only lead to the resentment that is palpable in this room tonight. Let's save family discussions for the family, and let's get back to educating our children on math and science and reading. Thank you.
Okay, would anybody else like to address the board?
Hello, I'm Christy Fow. I live at 1125 North Granville Road, and I've lived here in the Granville City or Granville Village and supported the Granville City school system for 25 years. We moved to Granville, like some other people have said, for the Granville City schools. And unlike most people, we have not had to use them at all. We chose, my husband and I prayed about it, and chose to homeschool our kids. And I do have to say thank you to the Granville City school system all these years for being so supportive. And my kids have been able to play sports and have had a wonderful upbringing here in Granville. I do have to say I love the passion in the room for everyone's feelings. That's how my husband and I were as far as knowing that the city school system didn't offer teaching of creation and that God was taken out of the public school systems. We decided, not any anger or hatred, we support you guys through taxes willingly. We want the kids in Granville to have a wonderful education, and I do have to say, I think that Granville City Schools has that reputation, and I applaud you. I applaud the teachers. I know how it is now to teach. I used to be a nurse, and I'm a teacher now, have been for 19 years, and it's hard work, and I admire what they do during COVID, as well as all of you, and with this situation as well. I do know that I feel as a teacher now, and as a mother, that it is, I agree with the lady who just spoke, I feel that it is a parental decision to teach your kids morals, standards, things like that. And I do very much agree with her that school should be teaching, most importantly, math, science, English, history. I do know that in the ACTs, at least in the English department, people have really struggled here in Granville, as well as other city schools, not just Granville. And again, I only applaud Granville City Schools. I have the utmost respect for you. But I do feel that we need to get back to the basics and teach our children the subjects and not teach them what parents should be teaching them at home. I do know, as far as being different with my kids being homeschooled, they were different. And were they always accepted? No. But I told them, when you're on the sports teams and no one knows who you are, be friendly, be kind, be respectful. And I don't see that happening here tonight. I feel that if we want our kids to be kind, friendly, and respectful, we as adults need to do that to each other. And so I would urge everyone, if we want our kids to be respectful and kind, I feel that we have to do the same. And I will be praying for the board. I'll be praying for the teachers. This is not an easy task. We have people on opposing sides. But I think we have to come together and realize kids are what's most important, not our thoughts and not our opinions. And I think that we do need more kindness and listening versus talking and having anger. And that's the best way for our kids to learn and be loving individuals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bryn Bird, and I live at 326 West Maple. I didn't really want to come up and speak tonight. I didn't think I had much to add, but at the end of the day, sorry, now I'm going to be one of those criers today. At the end of the day, I wanted to speak for the 7-year-old girl who wasn't able to speak in second grade when I was in second grade. My mom, too, was afraid to tell me about my family's makeup. I come from a blended family. My mom was divorced in the 60s when that was really unacceptable. And so my older 2 siblings had a different dad than I did. And my mom was too afraid to tell us, too afraid to talk to us. She didn't feel that 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds were ready for that information. But don't worry, my classmates told me. When I was in second grade, my oldest brother graduated from the United States Air Force Academy, and I grew up in Colorado, so it was like right there. And I could not have been more proud. I waited for a month for him to come talk to our class on Veterans Day. And he showed up in his uniform, his bright, shiny uniform, and I was the second grader who sat in the front row, so proud, standing straight up. This is my brother, he's my guy, you guys are all so jealous, this one's mine. And at the end of his talk about how he learned to fly planes and he was going to war, one of the little kids in class made sure to stand up and say, your last names aren't the same. And I didn't even ever know. But on his uniform it said Jones. My last name is Bird. And the other kids in the class said, he's not your brother, he's not your real brother, he's not your brother, you guys aren't brother and sister, that doesn't count. And at lunch, I sat and cried, not understanding what anybody meant. I was not told what that meant. I spent the rest of my childhood hiding the fact that we were not the same siblings. To even recently, one of my own adult friends who spoke earlier tonight even asked me, like, are you guys like the same parents, like the same family? And I knew what she meant. She meant, do you guys have the same parents? And even at 37 years old, the shame of that day in second grade came back up, and I lied, flat lied to her. And I said, yes, we have the same parents. And I knew what she was asking. But I was not given the tools to say what it meant to be family. The kids in my classroom, they were not educated to say, yes, a family is built by love. A family is just whatever it is, it's a family unit. My kindergartner, I have a second grader and a kindergartner who've gone through these units. I asked my kindergartner this week, what did you learn? And she said, as she was running around in circles, she said, all families look different, but family is love. And that was it. And I keep thinking back, what if 7-year-old me had been able to say, when the kids were laughing and saying we had a different last name, and I didn't even know my parents, I didn't even know we had a different last name, what if I had been able to say, so what? Families love. We're the same. I truly think so much of my life could have been different. One of the things that keeps being said tonight is that we need to go back to the basics. Had I felt safe, had I felt loved, had I felt protected in school at that time, which is what these amazing kindergartners, teachers are doing, is building trust and building love and building relationships among their peers. Think of how much different it would be, because in second grade, that was the year I struggled the most, the year that there was the parent-teacher conference the year I had to see the counselor, and there were questions on what was happening to my learning. It was that I didn't feel safe. And what if these kids could just feel safe and have that love and that relationship with each other so they could move on and they could focus on the reading and the writing and sounding out their words. So I thank you so much for tonight, and I know I had nothing to add, and you guys have stood up and said what you did, but I just had to speak up for 7-year-old me who didn't know what to say that day, so thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Hi, I'm Gray Piron, live at 155 Stone Creek Drive. I'm a senior this year, and I am happy that you guys are in support of the family unit. I think that's very important. I did not learn about queer people until I was in middle school, and I had to learn about it from my friends because I had never heard about any sorts of families like that. And I think if I had known about it sooner, I could have saved myself a lot of time figuring out who I was and not having to hate myself for so many years. And I'm currently in GSA, and a lot of kids, their parents don't accept them, and I can only imagine that if they had not learned who they were from their friends, that they would have had to hate themselves for many years the way that I did. And so thank you for supporting the family unit. I really appreciate it.
Hi there, my name is Lisa Brower, 3216 Sharon Valley Road. I have 4 students in the district, 1 in each school. And I would like to echo what I've heard tonight. I love the teachers. Shout out to Miss Weaver, a great kindergarten teacher, we loved her. We've been happy here. I think the point of the family unit, and this is what I've heard repeatedly tonight, is to teach acceptance, inclusion, compassion. I don't know if that's what's coming across. There is division in our community. There's not unity in our community. And I think that very point helps to solidify that this is something that should be taught in the home. We've had wonderful people stand up and talk about how they've had discussions with their young children about this very thing in the home. That's great. That's where it should be. We should be discussing this with our families. Because people might not agree with it, doesn't mean that that's not being discussed in their homes. Granville is a wonderful community. We have amazing parents of all backgrounds, of all different makeups. We have wonderful families. It doesn't matter the makeup of the family, but that's where these things should be taught. If we're going to talk about acceptance, inclusion, compassion, I'd like to share what's being talked about on our playgrounds at the intermediate school. You want to know what's being asked by the students? Hi, what's your name? It's a good start. Hi, what's your name? What's your sexual preference? That's the second question that's asked. In intermediate school, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, what's your sexual preference? I have a friend that goes to 5th grade at an intermediate school, and she told me this conversation that she had last week. Someone approached her, and she's new to the district. Someone approached her and asked her, hi, what's your name? What's your sexual preference? Before she could even respond, she said, if you're not bi, I can't be your friend. Is that acceptance, inclusion, compassion? It's what's taught in the home. We have to teach it in the home. We have to teach it by our examples. How we talk to our neighbors that don't agree with us, that maybe have a different religious affiliation, a different racial background. We have to show it by our examples. And the very fact that we have division in this room proves that this has to be taught in the home. We can't rely on the schools to teach these things, these principles. Yes, they can be added to and helped along. That's where we learn it in practice. But in theory and practice, we learn it in the home, and that's where we need to be focusing these efforts, not at school. Not at school. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to address the board?
Hello, my name's Elaine Kent. I live at 240 Glencairn Lane. I've been in Granville for 32 years, raised 4 kids here, classes of 2007, 9, 11, and 14. I feel like I'm like in another universe right now, and I'm only speaking because my heart goes out to all the parents today and the teachers in the schools. It's a terrible time right now, but also a lot of good can come out of this, God willing. What I'm concerned about and what I'm seeing is, I echo a lot of the comments being said. Love is number one. That's what we teach at home, love. Families should have love no matter how they're made, how they're put together. However, schools have a job to do, and it's not to deal with all the issues of society. And I'm afraid that you're going to be unable to do all of this that you want to do with good hearts, good intentions, sometimes government regulations or guidance, but you have to focus on the academics because that's what you do. My kids grew up with bullying. They grew up with not feeling included for whatever reason. Every reason to exclude people is dumb, right? So we teach our kids that every life is important and valuable. We do that at home. Teachers can model that. But all the little details of specific situations to make the life perfect and comfortable for every kid, you're actually doing them a disservice to go out into the real world. Your job is to educate the kids. When my kids were in school, there was a group of parents who actually, and I don't know what's going on right now, you move on and you don't pay attention to everything. I haven't been in this building for probably 7 years. They actually had a math class that was 2 levels ahead because kids were able to deal with this. You know, they were competing with schools in other countries. And it was never even considered until this one particular woman, I won't mention her name, but she pushed for additional math. So you had kids in, I don't know what grade it was, but it was middle school, 7th grade doing 10th grade math. Where will we have the resources to do things like that? When my son graduated, we decided brilliantly to do away with class rank. For some kids, that's their challenge. And really, this is an academic organization, right? So why we would do that is beyond me. We're supposed to promote academic excellence. The parents are supposed to promote character and virtue. You can help that along, but you can't instill that in kids. You can have rules, you can have standards, you can have teachers who pay attention and go after the bully, not the victim, which often happens, sadly, because of time issues. But I really hope that Granville Schools continues their excellence in education and let the parents deal with the character of the kids. And like someone very beautifully said, let the adults everywhere also be role models and examples for character. My heart goes out to the families, and these kids are my future too. I have grandchildren now coming up that will be going into different school systems. All of the kids should be strengthened, educated, know that they're loved and cared for by everybody, no matter what their family situation is. I don't think people disagree with that. I think what people disagree with is taking resources away and putting it in the schools where, no, teachers aren't qualified to talk to my kids about values and morals. They can emulate their own, and we have wonderful teachers here, but that's not the role of the school. So thank you for letting me talk.
Would anybody else like to address the board? No? Okay. All right. We will then move on in the agenda to board discussion. And we are going to focus on the return to school report that Mr. Brown gave us earlier. Was there anything else that you wanted to add before we start it?
No, I left the last slide up just to, keep it as a reference point for your discussion. And if you had any questions about some of the data that was shared.
Mr. Brown, thank you for all you've been doing this year. Thank you for last year. I think because of the hard work and dedication of yourself, our administrators, and all our teachers, we've been enormously successful. When I compare how we've done this past 18 months to so many districts around the state and around the country, I would gladly have my kids here in Granville compared to almost any place else they could be. That being said, relative to the plan, I support the current plan and its adaptation to the current recommendation to have a mask mandate for K through 6th. I do that with some hesitation because I don't like mandates. I don't like mandates not because I don't like masks. I wear a mask when it's appropriate. It's not that I am anti-science. I'm not at all anti-science. It's that people just don't like being told what to do, right? And that's, I supported the plan when we started the school year without masks or mask optional, and I think that was the right decision at the time. I have a couple of anecdotal stories I'd like to share just briefly. Although our high school has committed to the lowest level of mask wearing, the one place in the school district where I see uniformly 100% mask wearing is in several high school classrooms. In those classrooms, there's a student who's immunocompromised, and he's told his classmates that for him to be able to participate in school, he needs to have his classmates wearing masks. In those classrooms, 100% of the kids wear their masks, right? And that allows that student to be in school. I'll also point out that the one place that we do have a mask mandate, which is federally required on public transportation, including school buses, I've seen a lot of kids without masks. So it says to me that maybe mandates are not the only way. But in the current situation, I had really hoped that our community would be able to protect ourselves. I'm really encouraged by the very high level of vaccination, over 70% across our district. And I had hoped that we would be able to protect ourselves from the surge in the COVID virus, but it's not the case. Now we're faced with a situation where we know we want kids in school. You have to have the kids in the classroom to be able to educate them. That's something that we've learned. And we can't do that with the imposed quarantine. The state of Ohio has clear guidelines that are executed by the Licking County Health Department, and we have way too many kids that just can't be in school. Primarily in the K through 6 area where the kids can't get vaccines. They have to be quarantined by the health department. And so I think it's time to implement a K6 mask mandate. I hope that the students and families understand that it's not necessarily our first choice, our only choice. And I hope that we'll be flexible to continue to work with the health department as they adapt rules for quarantine. I hope we'll continue to look at the data and adapt the plan. And I hope we'll continue to model civility and appropriate mask wearing when it's appropriate. I also would like to echo a few of the things that the panel of doctors said. First of all, around vaccines. Vaccines is a fantastic way to lower the risk of infection if you get coronavirus. It's not foolproof. We know there are breakthrough cases. It's not the only solution, but it's a possible solution. So I'm encouraged that so many people in Granville and so many of our older students have chosen that. The other thing I'll say is that I think we all need to protect ourselves when we're not in school. The vast majority of the cases of COVID of the students in our school district are not from transmission within the schools. It's only very recently that we've had any transmission, which I think is encouraging, but also now a real sign to us that we need to consider this K-6 mandate until this surge passes. So be careful everywhere. You know, we know we have a lot of transmission that's due to families traveling, due to families' extended relationships and so forth. That's something that will continue to happen. Please, everyone, be very mindful of the symptom check that needs to be done every day on our students as a first line of defense to keep our students safe. So that was kind of a long-winded kind of speech there and so forth. I do support the K-6 mandate, and I hope that we will, as a community, work our way through this so it's not necessary in the future.
Thanks, Mom.
I support the plan as well. My question has to do with sort of procedurally, when, you know, things are looking better, how do you still have authority then to pull back on mandates and those kind of layers of protection?
Yeah, I think, well, at least my understanding of what the board authorization is that, you know, as I can add on a layer of protection, I can also peel one off. Obviously, the communication that happens to the board members about where we're at from the COVID positive rates and all the quarantining and everything needs to continue. And so it somewhat timed for this board meeting. That was just happenstance. But I think it's important for us to continue to communicate and stay on top of every single case. And in the future, if we are in a position of strength and we can remove a layer of protection and potentially increase the ability for our students to have an educational experience that's positive, then we'll move in that direction as soon as possible.
Good. And are you finding communication the way it's been done through emails and you know, wherever it's been posted and those kind of communications? Do you feel like that's been effective and people have been getting messages?
Yeah, I think it's effective. Unfortunately, I think at times it also creates a culture of fear. And so I can't communicate everything that I know on a regular basis. One, it wouldn't be appropriate, but it is challenging because we don't want to create a culture of fear. We want to create a culture that relies on the layers of protection to keep people safe. And I think that's an important process that we need to continue. But we are required by law to communicate. So we continue to do that. And we do have a parent population that wants that information.
Yeah, thank you. I have expressed before that I'm concerned about the levels of positive cases and the levels of quarantine and how that's disrupting kids' educational experiences. I think also I know that I'm concerned that the numbers don't reflect all of that. Personally, in the last 3 weeks, I've had my kids tested a total of 3 times, twice for one child, once for another. They were all negative, that's great, but they missed a day of school. That doesn't get reflected in anything, but I did it because I could not live with myself if I sent my child back and somebody else got infected. In the dispatch yesterday, they reported that the American Academy of Pediatrics said that COVID cases among children have increased 240% nationally since early July, when the Delta variant began to take hold. Cases for Ohio kids increased 2,000% during that same period. The K-6 mandate is great. I don't think it protects enough of our kids. I think we need to go to the middle school and the high school as well. I understand that there are instances where there are medical reasons or other exemptions, and I would respect those. But I think to keep as many of our kids learning as possible, this is a half measure.
One of the things I think Mr. Brown has reiterated throughout the schools dealing with COVID-19 is that we need to be flexible and nimble, and the plans are in pencil when it comes to COVID. And I think at our previous meeting, we discussed that and one of the reasons we wanted you to have the flexibility is because things change, and they change quickly with this. And I support the K through 6 because of the numbers. And I think it's the right thing we need to do. But I just want to reiterate that I know our community, I know myself, we're tired of this, but it's here. And so I'm sure everyone's heard this, be patient and get along, and I know we're all tired of it, but we've got to worry about the health of our kids. So I support the K through 6 and just want to emphasize that the plans are in pencil and that they can change for the good or what some are looked at as the bad when it comes to these things. So I think we just need to all be mindful of that, is that this is an ever-changing situation.
Thank you. I don't have a whole lot to add, but I do support the latest recommendation to go mask mandate in the K-6 grades. I agree with Thomas that I think the plan that we had at the beginning of the year fit our data. I think we did okay with it, but I think things are changing. Having 55 kids, actually 72 kids if you include those who are actually sick, not just quarantined, or maybe it's, there's overlap there. So that's a lot of kids to be out, and it's hard for our staff to keep them, up to date, and the quality of, education is not as good if you're at home. We don't have the remote option this year, so, as everybody has said, we need to keep everybody in school because that's what's best for students. So I also agree that this is the measure that we need to take at this time. But also, every day, Mr. Brown almost talks with the Department of Health. And so we keep a very close eye on our data and what is happening. And as Mr. Wolf said, nobody likes to wear these. We're tired of it, and we would just like to get through this. So, we will keep an eye on, as close as we kept an eye on the data to institute this mask mandate, we will also keep an eye on it to see if there are times or ways that we can also alleviate or remove a layer if that's possible. So other than that, we have nothing else to add. So
from a procedural perspective, if it is the desire of the board, I would recommend at the time amending the 10.02 authorization for superintendent to include the language of the K-6 mandate.
Yeah, we'll do.
At that time.
Right.
Superintendent Brown, several community members have said, can't you just have a number, right? And when the number goes above this or below this in cases, it's easy, you flip the switch, right? And I've responded that it's much more complicated than that, right? We really look at much more detail and behind the scenes in terms of where and how a transmission could have occurred, in terms of which buildings and ages and so forth. Can you give us a little more your perspective on whether it's possible just to have an easy number to flip when the time comes, or what you do on a regular basis in working through this in the time that we spend looking at our cases?
Yeah, what's interesting is when the medical advisory group talked, medical professionals, I don't think, can agree on a specific number or a specific metric. I think you have to look at it holistically and take all of the data into account. At the very beginning of the year, some of our numbers started to creep. I knew that some of those numbers were the result of very large families. So, I felt more comfortable that it wasn't multiple situations occurring within the school at the same time. So there's a lot of factors, but knowing that, we've had some examples or some, indications of spread and transmission occur, even through the contact tracing process, I think that to me is critical. But I also think we've referenced the fact that we have multiple students, at home for 10 days of time. That's a challenge for parents, and it's a challenge for the school district. And if we can have less students quarantining because they're masked, then that's advantageous for learning.
And that is, to keep kids out of quarantine, that's the tool we have right now.
Correct.
Because as you've said, we have to do this by law. We have to, contact trace, and we have to follow the quarantine rule. The quarantine rules are not ours. They are that of the Licking County Health Department and the Ohio Department of Health. And so the one tool that we have in our tool belt right now that we haven't used yet, in order to keep as many kids keep as many kids out of quarantine and in school is a mask. So again, just I think more reasons why I think it's a good idea. Okay.
Moving on to the action agenda?
Sure.
Action item 10.01 is the approval of OPES 2.0 as the evaluation tool for our principals.
So moved.
Second.
Any other comments about that? So I spent 3 years working on OTES at the Educator Standards Board and 2 years working on OPES at the Educator Standards Board. So I feel like I know those documents pretty darn well, and they align with the organizational goals of Granville schools.
Any questions? No? All right, take the roll, please.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Dietz?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Thank you. 10.02 is the authorization for the superintendent to enact any reasonable regulations necessary to implement the district's plan for addressing COVID-19.
So moved.
Second.
Were you going to amend it?
Do we need?
Yeah.
Can I propose a modification to the motion to include, at the end of the current text, including the temporary mandate for masks at the K-6 level, and as conditions warrant, as determined by the superintendent. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I didn't quite
So
write it
moved.
out, but
Second.
thank you.
So authorization for the superintendent as amended.
Correct.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw?
Aye.
Ms. Dietz?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Thank you. 10.03 is a salary adjustment for the Director of Technology, Glenn Welker.
So moved.
Ooh, that was quick.
It is
I don't know
quick.
who won.
First, whoever here second?
I think it was Amy, and Thomas and Amy.
Thomas and Amy.
Okay, so Mr. Welker has been in the position for quite some time. He has been at the technology coordinator level for several years. He's recently received his master's in educational leadership, and he has been serving in the capacity of Director of Technology since 2015. It's time to adjust his salary accordingly. And he's fantastic at his job. Yeah.
And his job and the work of his entire team has proven to be extremely critical these last years and things like that. And it's the fact that we've worked ahead, right, and foresaw some needs here that we're in as good of a situation as we are. So from my perspective, approved with thanks.
Can I brag on him just a little bit, or at least his team? I was deleting some old emails, and I saw that last year we were getting staff, but I'm on that email list, getting updates. I think it was weekly on new technology and how to use it and how to implement it in the classroom and what it would be beneficial for. And it kind of went over my head last year, but looking back and seeing that, I thought that was amazing, and that was really helpful. Besides the mics here tonight, the mics over at the district office, yeah.
Thanks to Tim as well.
Yeah.
And he gave me my password today, so I could get in, so I could read my email.
It's the
So
little
thank you.
things.
I agree with everything. So take the roll, please.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Thank you. That concludes our action agenda. Our consent agenda is 11.01A through C10.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, we have typical items, including a donation for the George Todd Memorial Fund. Appreciate that donation. We have supplementals. We have a list of substitute teachers. We have a couple of certificated staff additions, and including a couple of positions that were vacated towards the beginning of the school year. We've been able to replace those, which is excellent, and some extended time contracts. So everything else is in alignment with previous consent agenda items.
Real quick, love to see retired teachers' names as home instructors, as subs, as, I mean, how great is that they leave and they're like, I might as well come back. I like it over there.
That is helpful right now.
Yeah, right, yeah, for sure, yeah. Any questions about the consent agenda? No? Right, take the roll, please.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Thank you.
Finances.
Item 12.01, approval of the August 2021 financial report.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments on the financial report? Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Thank you. Item 12.02, approval of the permanent appropriation resolution for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
In June each year, we approve temporary appropriation resolution to allow us to begin spending, and then those first couple months we spend getting our final grant allocations and finalizing the budget, and then we are required to approve permanent appropriations each year by the end of September. So this is doing that. The changes that we've made since June are related to, as I mentioned, final grant allocations that in June were estimates, as well as changes made that we discussed with the funding formula and how Granville Christian receives their auxiliary services funds. So we no longer have to budget for that. So those are the changes that are being included in this resolution. And we do make changes to them throughout the year. So if any changes need to be made at the fund level, that has to come back for approval in subsequent months.
Thank you. Any questions? No? Okay, take the roll, please.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Item 12.03, approval of the tax sheltered annuity providers for the district's 403B, 457, Roth 403B, and Roth 457 plans.
So moved.
Second.
We have a list of approved tax sheltered annuity providers that we have added additional providers as options for our employees. So this is no cost to the district. It is just additional options that our employees have to save for their retirement. So this is a positive for everybody.
It's nice that we can provide this kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Options and guidance, you know, whew, that's the word I'm looking for. Anyway, thank you for doing this. Any other questions and smarter comments than what I just made? Take the roll, please.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Ms. Shaw.
Aye.
Ms. Deeds.
Aye.
Mr. Wolf.
Aye.
Dr. Corman.
Aye.
Item 12.04, approval of the resolution to establish the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief 2 Fund and the Elementary and Secondary School Relief 3 Fund.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
These are the COVID grant funds that we have been reviewing each month. We just have to go through the formal process of establishing them as accounts for audit purposes. So this is doing that.
Any questions? Comments? All right, take the roll, please.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye. And with that, make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? No? Okay, take the roll, please.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you for being here.